Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another episode of TriVersity Talk. I am Stephen Bloomer T.
And I am Wendy Stewart Kaplan, and I'm happy to be here tonight.
And I am thrilled to be here. Wendy and I just finished a TriVersity board meeting, so we're especially peppy tonight.
That's right. We're revved up. We're ready to go.
And before we introduce you to our next guest, we'll talk about TriVersity a little bit because TriVersity is currently sending out or taking, I guess taking's not the right word, a needs assessment survey. Right. And this will help guide us into the future, into this COVID age, in terms of what services and programs we can offer that best fit your needs.
Right.
And we just want to hear from you. So please take our survey. I am going to post the little link right up here. It's in the comments, whether you're on Facebook or on YouTube. So we greatly appreciate it if you take our little survey.
And it only took me 12 minutes to do. That's right. So it's quick, it's easy, and it really helps us out. And at the end of the day, if it helps us out, we can help you out.
Absolutely. So that's my plug for tonight. Well, one more plug.
Oh, you have another plug.
If you're on here, as always, whether you're on Facebook or YouTube, give us a like or a love. And if you're on YouTube and you haven't subscribed, please smash that subscribe button because every subscription helps and we greatly appreciate your support.
I think we should give a prize to our 200th subscriber. That just occurred to me.
Well,
so that's motivation.
One step at a time. Let's get to 100 first. All right. Well, with that said, we are very excited to introduce this week's guest. He is the executive director of the National Equality Action Team, or the NEAT, or NEAT.
NEAT. I love that. NEAT.
And we are very happy to introduce Brian Silva. Welcome, Brian.
Hey, Brian.
Hey there. How's it going? Good to see you both.
Fantastic. Really great to see you too. How's everything going on in your world with this upcoming election? Oh my gosh.
It's a bit hectic. It's crazy. You know, everybody needs to register and everybody needs to go out and vote. Vote. That's the thing.
Vote. That's what we're telling everybody too. So, Stephen, you can take it. Or I read so much about you, and the word grassroots came up a lot. I love that word. And how is it you became such a grassroots persona?
You know, I think it's the power in our country is in the hands of the people, and that's really what what it means to be a grassroots organization. It's powered by people. 99% of the people who work at NEAT and on the things that we do are volunteers. They give their time and their heart and their energy into that, and that energy translates into programs and activities and actions that I just think are extraordinarily powerful and extraordinarily persuasive, because the people who are demanding change are the ones that are living in it and are doing the work.
Right.
So Brian, what is NEAT for anyone who hasn't heard of NEAT?
Sure. So NEAT's the National Equality Action Team, and we were founded as kind of a version 2.0 of Marriage Equality USA, which I used to be the executive director of, which was also about grassroots action, specifically for one issue, which was marriage. And when we achieved marriage equality here in the U.S., it was important for all of us involved that, while we could say mission accomplished with that, obviously full LGBTQ justice and equality was not. So to have just taken that 20 years of resources and infrastructure and sunsetted it was not what we thought was a great idea. And so NEAT was born from it to do similar tactics of work, similar strategy, but to work on a wider range of issues. So we work on both things that people might traditionally think of as LGBTQ justice issues, like passing non-discrimination ordinances and banning conversion therapy. But we're also protecting women's reproductive rights. Half of LGBTQ people are women. And so reproductive rights is an LGBTQ issue. Democracy reform, we've been very involved in getting people to complete the census, because that's going to affect everything from, your elected officials to the money that you receive, in a pandemic. So, yeah. Yeah, so that's neat. We do almost all of our work is virtual, and that's specifically so that everybody can get involved. You don't have to live in a big city or in a blue state or places with a huge LGBTQ infrastructure. You can connect with us online and virtually, and take action right from your own couch.
So with this being the pandemic, Brian, do you find that nothing has changed in the way you're doing things, or you're able to reach even more people because so many people are at home?
I think for us specifically, it hasn't changed as much. Definitely things have changed. We had 9 in-person fundraisers that were all canceled. Wow. Fundraising still happens in person. The way that we reach elected officials, most of ours is having people call, email, and text with their elected officials. But the in-person meetings that sometimes would be, coordinated and organized, that all changed to, becoming more virtual. And also, just as important as LGBTQ issues are, and to keep fighting for those, obviously, we want to support a positive response to the pandemic, which is disproportionately affecting people in our community, people of color, low income folks. So yeah, definitely some changes. I think for us, because we've really been a virtual organization, since birth, as it were, I think we were able to pivot a little bit easier and had a little bit of a less change than some of our other, colleagues in the business.
So, Brian, I'm going to kind of change topics because I'm going to talk I don't remember the exact moment we met, but, you're a friend of Richard's, from one of Richard's friends, Eduardo.
Hi, Richard.
And I remember meeting you, and I was like, wow, he's adorable. And then I learned he's an activist, and I was like, super mega man crush. So I just have to ask, what inspired activism in you? What got you to do what you do?
Too.
Yeah. It's funny. I get asked this question quite a bit. And for the longest time, it was like, I never really given it much thought. It truly, helping other people is just kind of how our family was brought up. It was just kind of second nature. You do good things. I was raised Catholic, and a lot of, at least the version of Catholicism I was raised with was, you help people that are less fortunate. You help out people that are being mistreated. So really, from just the absolute youngest age, that was just kind of the ethos that we grew up in our family. My mom, I think, was a big inspiration for me. That she's had one of the biggest hearts of anybody I've ever known, and that was just part of who we were when we were growing up. That I can't really remember a time when that wasn't the case. So for me, it really was my family, and I think my faith upbringing when I was younger was what really kind of inspired me to to always be working to help people in some way or another with part of what I'm doing in my life.
When you were in college, did you start to see that you could get more involved and really make more of a difference?
Yeah, I think, I started my own nonprofit when I was in high school. It was called Project Chief.
One of those kids.
I didn't even wait for college to start that stuff up.
That's great.
And it was a group of high school kids. Thankfully, this happens a lot less, but it still happens. Folks who were living with HIV and AIDS were oftentimes lost their jobs and their family and their friends. And what we would do is we would go to a facility in Oakland, California, where people with HIV and AIDS were living, and most of them had no connection to friends or family. They had been dropped, and we would do entertainment. We would have bingos. We would have Halloween parties, and it was basically the group of friends of mine that were in kind of church youth group together formed this and went and did that. I think what happened in college is I think my activism got more politically focused. Mm-hmm. Coming out in college as a queer person, obviously cared about LGBTQ rights beforehand, but of course, when it becomes personal to you, I think your activism changes when you do have, kind of some skin in the game, as it were, and expanded to things like racial justice and other things that, I think college is just a great vehicle for exposing you to different people and different ideas and seeing more of the reality in the world and the challenges. And so I think it inspires you to get more involved.
I love what you said about your Catholic youth group, you know, because within our community, in all communities, we grapple with religion these days, right? And Catholicism, and we've had roundtables about it with TriVersity, and different people are affected. I don't have to tell you, in different ways with their Catholic upbringing. I love that you described the closeness of your family, and obviously you came from a home where you were learned, I am my brother's keeper, right? And the Catholic youth group that you were in, getting involved with HIV and AIDS, it's a very healthy attitude.
Yeah. And I recognize, you know, I was very lucky that was what kind of how our Catholic Church operated. You know, many people have a very different experience, especially in the LGBT community with their faiths. But one of the things that I've really enjoyed has been joyful watching is as I've gotten older and activism has continued, the expansion of acceptance and embracing by communities of faith of the LGBTQ community. I think faith and anti-LGBT for the longest time were seen as synonymous. And now so many religious faiths are very opening and welcoming, and, you know, LGBTQ people feel like they can be open about their faith and do it in a healthy way. And we're not ceding that ground in activism anymore, that, you know, faith and LGBTQ are opposite of each other. They can absolutely be hand in hand.
Absolutely. I mean, we've been truly fortunate to have some guests, and not just guests, but people that we've met from TriVersity, the United Methodist Church here. They're a reconciling faith church. So they've actively taken a stand against, you know, the official Methodist Church. So I mean, even in the midst of the kind of balance where you, like you said, faith doesn't always feel synonymous with LGBTQ, we get constant reinforcement that is not the case.
We've been very lucky in our community. We have a rabbi who's affiliated with us as well.
Oh, great.
The spiritual roundtable that you did about religion, I mean, that was really beneficial to people. So
Brian, speaking of kind of spiritual and thinking about it in these terms, what inspired you to kind of begin focusing on marriage equality?
I wish I could tell you it was this giant calculated thing for me, but yeah. Well, you know, so you're just kind of also thinking about growing up. I never thought that I would get married. I never thought that I wanted to. I think growing up as a kid, because marriage was not something available to LGBTQ people, it was never something that I was, some kids are, from day one are like, oh, I can't wait to get married. And I just never thought that was something that LGBTQ people could do. I did, however, believe in equality. And so I was living in New York when the Proposition 8 campaign started. And one of the things, also coming full circle, that I was able to do to get involved with it being that far away was phone banking. So I did some phone banking for the Prop 8 campaign. Obviously that vote did not go the way that we wanted. And in New York, like in many cities across the country, there was a giant rally and march, after that, to protests. And I was there, and I met some folks who were there and said, oh, well, there's a group working on marriage equality here in New York, and we meet at the LGBT Center once a month. You should come. So I went, and then I did that dumb thing. I put my name on some piece of paper and said I would volunteer.
I'm guilty of that.
I'm guilty of that.
Oh, I'll just do a little volunteering, and the next thing you know, I was the deputy executive director, and then I was the executive director, and then I had left my job, and that it became a full-time job for me. And so it was very much not planned, not thought out. For me, it was much more just about whether I was going to ever get married or not wasn't the question. The question was, should LGBTQ people be able to? And so that for me is always the fundamental of what marriage equality was about. And I was very fortunate that during that time met and fell in love with my husband, Jonathan. And on the day that the Obergefell decision came down, he proposed to me, and it was quite a capstone for that journey, both personally and professionally.
Wow. So I want to get back to grassroots because could you describe, like, in day to day with what you do now, what are some of the aspects of a grassroots organization? You did mention phone banking. What are some of the other things you have to do?
Yeah. So, some of it's very traditional, fundraising. We are right now in the process of a campaign to no Supreme Court nomination until after inauguration, that we should be protecting the norms of our democracy. So that obviously came out of nowhere with the very sad passing of the amazing Ruth Bader Ginsburg.
Right.
Some of that. A lot of volunteer recruitment. A lot of time is spent with meeting new volunteers, doing introductions, onboarding, getting them set up and getting started. One of the things also with grassroots and with volunteers is, and this is a plug for, I know you'll appreciate this, but for everybody who does sign up to volunteer with an organization, we do, please show up.
Gosh, yes.
So it's there's a lot of, I tell people this because it's very honest. There's a lot of time spent in grassroots and volunteer-led organizations with just managing volunteers. And when you find great ones, you hold on to them like, precious stones. And we have some of the most amazing ones at NEAT, and I'm sure you have some amazing ones, at TriVersity as well. So that's a lot of the time. A lot of it is, when you have to be powered by grassroots people, if you want to do more, you have to get more people in. So we do a lot of that. And then all of our work is always done in collaboration with other organizations, whether they be issue area experts or they are local in the area that we're working. It's a core aspect of who we are, so that the people being most impacted are leading our work. And so a lot of it is also building those collaboratives, building those coalitions, and working together so that then we can, execute the actions like phone banks or, before pandemic, door knockings and things like that.
So within these communities, I would imagine sometimes it's challenging to gain trust. You coming in from the outside. What are some of the ways that you're able to do that? I mean, you've got a great smile and you're very engaging. You'd have my trust automatically, but how do you? I'm easy. How do you gain that trust?
So fortunately for us, we have a long history. So when we were with Marriage Equality USA, we were a grassroots organization, but we were also so big that we worked with a lot of kind of the more, mainstream LGBT organizations, like Empire State Pride Agenda in New York, or Garden State Equality, or HRC, or things like that. And we were kind of always known as the folks who could kind of have one foot on either side, a trusted partner on both. And so when we spun NEAT off from Marriage Equality USA, that trust, I think a lot of that trust came with us. So we're fortunate to have that. We also there's some things we do when we're building actions. We always reach out to the folks that are local and ask them, what do you need? Like, this is almost all of my conversations. What do you need? How can we be most helpful? And 9 times out of 10, they're just shocked that we asked, and they appreciate it, and they know what they need. And 10% of the time they said, what would be really helpful is if you don't do what you're saying you want to do here. And we say, okay.
Wow.
And we leave. Or we'll
right.
Do whatever it is that they think is best. And I think those moments, and that reputation in the community has spread pretty far and wide. So people know what they're getting with us, when we come in to partner with them on something.
Wow. That would, I mean, how do you feel if you approach a community and you put some time in, and at the end of the day, they basically say to you, close but no cigar. We don't want what you're selling. How do you deal with that?
Well, for me, it's still a positive outcome. We've made a connection. We've made a new partnership, whether we've taken action together today, or maybe this is building something for the future, or they say, like you said, close but no cigar today. Maybe 6 weeks down the road, something happens in the community and they need help for something. They'll know that they can come and ask us to partner with them on something like that. So, it's for us, the process and the relationship building is just as important as what the goal is, or at least what we think the goal is when we start. That might not be the goal that, you know, we end up with at the end of the day.
That is, truer words have never been spoken. I mean, your flexibility is really incredible, because sometimes the thing that you are trying to do ends up not being the thing that you end up doing, but you're equally as successful in it. You need to have a certain amount of flexibility and to be able to leave your ego at the door.
Yep, absolutely. 100%.
I have to ask, I mean, because you work for Marriage Equality New York and then Marriage Equality USA. So when Obergefell, the decision came out, what was your reaction? How did you feel?
Joy and elation, and then panic. We had part of a national coalition of groups responding to the event, and we were kind of the lead organization on the giant rally that was going to be happening in front of the Stonewall Inn in New York. So I basically grabbed my suit jacket, hopped into a taxi, and went from interview to interview to interview at different television studios and stations, and then got to the Stonewall, and, you know, putting everything together and coordinating the speakers and elected officials, and then going through with that. So it really wasn't until the end of the day that I kind of really got to sit with what had just happened, this history making event, and that's that's just kind of part of what comes along with the job. I'm very fortunate to get to do what I do, but yeah, it really was the end of the day that I kind of got to soak it all in. And, it's a rare thing for a nonprofit to put themselves out of business. Unfortunately, many of the things that nonprofits work for, so there was also some kind of what's next. We celebrated our 20-year anniversary of Marriage Equality USA, and we kind of celebrated that year, as well as our kind of closing / transition launching of NEAT. So we did still have a few more things to do, but yeah, I didn't really get to soak it in until the end of the day.
So after the decision, as inevitably happens, comes the backlash. And we had Kim Davis, with her arms in the air, refusing to give licenses, which has ultimately led to an appeal, or she did appeal to the Supreme Court, and they refused to take the appeal. But in refusing, Justices Thomas and Alito made statements about the decision in Obergefell, and they were not necessarily kind. They basically said, well, this was a bad decision, and it is interfering with people's religious liberties. So what were your thoughts when you saw that come up in the news?
I think the biggest threat to marriage equality is going to be less about somebody, like a Thomas or an Alito finding a way to overturn Obergefell, whether they want to or not. I think the biggest threat to marriage equality and any of our civil liberties, the reproductive rights and the right to an abortion and things like that, voting rights, is the chipping away on the outside. The issue when you think about, people will say to me, well, why should Kim Davis have to perform? Why should she have to sign the marriage license? Why can't they just say that, let somebody else in the office do it? And it's the first step of a slippery slope. You talk about first it's that. And then it's, well, if the town clerk in this town doesn't want to, then you can travel to the next town. And then if that person doesn't, then you can travel another hour to the next town. And we've seen this on the attack on women's rights and civil rights across our country, and LGBTQ rights and marriage equality are no different, until what you see in reproductive rights. Some of the laws that are passed are so overbearing. They don't ban abortion, but what they've done is they've banned access to legal, safe abortion in a state, because nobody can open a clinic or will refuse to offer it, and people have to travel across state lines.
Yeah, they just make it impossible for it to happen.
Exactly.
So, I mean, but thinking about the possibility of Judge Barrett on the court, do you think that reconsideration of the Obergefell decision wouldn't come up? I mean, it definitely, I mean, 4 of those justices are very much still on the court.
Absolutely.
And she's talking about sexual preference over sexual orientation, which makes me question how kind to the community she might be as a Supreme Court justice.
Yeah, and I don't think there's any question that she's not she's not supportive of our community in the way that we would want a Supreme Court justice to be, or like Justice Ginsburg was. And I think I think you always have to be worried about it, and I think you always have to stay vigilant about it. But in thinking about, what I would be more concerned about in the short-term immediate future, it would be kind of the chipping away at Obergefell. But absolutely, we should be vigilant and make sure that precedent stays precedent and, remains the law of the land. We're very fortunate, we have high 60s, 70%, support and approval for, marriage equality in this country. And that is, obviously a very big help with keeping a decision like that. And so, everybody knows somebody who's queer. Many people have been to a same-sex marriage, and, all of the sky is falling things that were going to happen if 2 gay men were allowed to get married. Well, surprise, they didn't happen. And so I think, the time also helps to, make people more comfortable with it, and helps to solidify something like that to stick around.
I think the thing that concerns me, I love you're so positive, your glass is totally full. Sometimes with a crack in it and water spilling out of it. I'm very worried about what's coming up. Very worried about Amy Barracconi, and, a number of people that I've talked to, and I'm sure you've seen it on Facebook. People are like, don't even talk to me till after the election is over. Mm-hmm. How do you keep your positive attitude? How do you keep your cool, Brian?
Well, I fortunately have a wonderful husband and family that, gets to see all of the crazy. Gets to be my sounding board, and kind of my rock to keep me from tipping that full of optimism glass over. I also have become over time just much more what I watch and what I listen to, and how much, when it comes to like the news and the Facebook wannabe journalisms and, and stuff like that, I really limit my exposure to social media, on there. But, I try to really, pay attention to, to watch real solid news and to limit the amount of it. So much of it is just people's opinions. So much of it is just regurgitation. There's a lot of misinformation out there. But there's a lot of great journalism out there and really good news sources. And so going there, supporting those, and kind of then putting the nose to the grindstone and going out and doing the work, because we can definitely get so caught up in reading about all the terrible things going on in our country, of which there are, that it gets almost like a feeling of inevitability, and there's nothing we can do to change it. There's nothing we can do to fix it. And, I never want to get to that point. I absolutely don't believe that. And so going out and sure, doing good change, even if it's, those one little steps at a time to add up, makes you feel, like it's worth doing. And I think that keeps you positive when you see that even in what has been a disaster of a presidential, kind of term that we have had to all suffer through, there's still a lot of good things we've been able to do. And that's helped us to get through that and helps us to get through kind of any of the kind of darker times.
Well, sometimes going through like the darker times, like we've had to go through, and then having the pandemic on top of it, I've just seen such an incredible groundswell with people reaching out to other people. I mean, I hate to use the cliche, we're all in this together, but you really do start to realize that. And in many ways, people are saying, oh, we're so polarized, we're so apart. Well, there is truth to that, but there's also the truth to within our own communities. We've never been stronger or more powerful or more together or more on the same page. And there's a value to that because we all have to look down the road, right? Like for you, you know, how do you see like the next year for you?
Well, you know, hopefully the outcome of the election will be something positive for LGBTQ people, and that will lead to our being able to reintroduce the Equality Act in Congress, which would be the national non-discrimination law, passed the House this year with bipartisan support overwhelmingly. But of course, Senator McConnell won't let it up for a vote in the Senate. So we're very hopeful that on the national scale, that will be a big push. Most people don't know that until the Bostock Supreme Court decision this summer, it was still legal to fire people in almost half of the states in the country just for being LGBTQ. And, you know, in most of the states, you can still be denied a public service, so kicked out of a restaurant or a hotel or an Uber just for being LGBTQ. You know, that's going to be a big national, you know, push for us. And then on the local level is, you know, continuing with things like banning conversion therapy, and, you know, the results of the census are going to lead to reapportionment in all of the states, and making sure that, you know, districts are drawn in a way that, you know, represent the actual will of the people that live there, including LGBTQ communities. So that's kind of the second half of the census project that we're working on now. And then also we know that the folks that are opposed to our humanity and our equality are going to find new and imaginative ways to try to take away or stop the, you know, the human rights that we're entitled to. And so, you know, part of it will just be continuing to adapt and try to stay one step ahead and respond, and, you know, keep America a pro LGBTQ country. The overwhelming majority of people support, you know, equality and humanity for LGBTQ people. And we have to keep reminding folks of that, reminding our elected officials of that. And then organizations like NEAT, you know, getting that grassroots voice to be heard in the halls of power.
So Brian, on November 4th, the day after our election, whether any and all of us are celebrating or mourning, a very important Supreme Court case that will be on the docket, potentially with Judge Barrett on the court. Can you talk to us a little more about what that case is?
Sure. So the case is Fulton versus the city of Philadelphia. And on the surface, the case is about Philadelphia's non-discrimination ordinance that it applies to its contracts for those that provide foster care services. And so those receiving organizations that receive public funds are required to serve the whole public. You can't deny a Black family foster, you know, care. You can't deny a woman. You also can't deny LGBTQ people from participating. And there are two organizations that refused to serve LGBTQ people, saying one of them specifically citing because of their faith, and appealed the decision that says they should be able to get the public funds, but then selectively choose who in the public they provide the services for. So that case is going to be heard on November 4th, like you said, potentially with all 9 Supreme Court justices. But it's not just about foster care. Because what the organizations are doing is they are asking the court to declare that any religious organization can declare that their faith belief allows them to choose who they want to serve, and creates a religious exemption for organizations even when they're receiving public funding. So this could open up, a religiously affiliated hospital could choose which patients they want to serve. We've already seen other foster care organizations, Christian foster care organizations, not provide services to Mormons or Jews.
Right.
It's not just an LGBTQ issue. It's about, whether we're going to allow legal discrimination in the United States. The freedom of religion is one of the most important freedoms that we have. It's protected all over the place. It's there in the Constitution. We do not need to, on top of that, add legal discrimination onto the books. We have a good balance of how we make sure people can practice their faith and their beliefs, but also make sure that we're a country that is open to all, is welcome to all, and where everybody gets treated in an equal manner. So it's a really, really important case that could have much wider ranging implications and way beyond the LGBTQ community. Yeah, and so we hope that folks will tune in. It's going to be recorded, so even if you can't watch us live, you'll get a copy of the recording, just like with this show, and be able to watch it again, because we know on the 4th, folks might be a little tired, but they'll want to get this and to hear what happened, and then the decision will come down sometime early next year.
Explain to me what exactly we're watching on the 4th, because NEAT is facilitating, and TriVersity is very proud to be a co-sponsor of something going on the 4th. Tell us more about what's going on.
The event.
Yeah.
So I'll be hosting a panel. I will be Stephen and Wendy. So we're gonna have a panel of speakers from the National Women's Law Center, from the Human Rights Campaign, Americans United for Separation of Church and State, and Family Equality. So they'll be talking about what happened that day in the court. They'll explain a little bit about the case, like I did. What happened in the court? What were the arguments that were made? What seemed persuasive? How were the justices responding? What questions did the justices ask? Oftentimes gives us some insight into what they're thinking. And so they'll give us the analysis and breakdown, and then we'll talk about what we can be doing between now and decision day to hopefully get a positive ruling for our community.
And where can people go to learn more about this or tune in?
Yeah.
Sure. So they can sign up at ourdayincourt.org. And that's there's a link on there to RSVP. It also lists all of our panelists. It's got all of our sponsors like TriVersity on there. I think we're approaching 100 organizations across the country that are now co-sponsoring the event. So we're very, very happy about that. It's very NEAT-esque to have an event where we have 100 partners where we're working together. And we know everybody is so dialed into the election. We're very happy that we're able to create this event and have our sponsors, be able to plug in and still offer, the opportunity for their members.
Yeah, it's absolutely
really great.
Terrific, because this is such an important case. And really the implications could even just go farther than religious organizations. This could be the cake shop baker potentially saying that my faith prohibits me from making your wedding cake. Now, a case like that went before the Supreme Court, but kind of got overturned based on
a technicality, really. Yeah.
But this could actually say that, if this person claims it infringes on their liberty, then we have to take that very seriously and could potentially allow anyone and everyone to just ignore public accommodation laws across the country.
There's a much bigger picture with this. When it's interesting, when the pandemic started, I don't know if a lot of people were aware of this, but Billy Graham's organization came in and put up this tented hospital in Central Park, right across from Mount Sinai. And I watched it be built. I was up there walking the dog, and I'm like, this is not okay. And there were people giving out, religious literature, right? And if you read about what that particular organization believed in, they flat out said, you couldn't join them if you were homosexual. It was a sin. So that brings to light, I talked about this with a number of people, you get COVID and they don't have enough beds in Mount Sinai and they pop you into this tented hospital. Is your life at risk? Because there is the chance that somebody that's working there that believes that is not going to give you the proper medical care. And that's a really good example of what you're talking about, how it's a much bigger picture. And religion can play a huge part in all of this now.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely. And again, it doesn't, like you were saying, it doesn't even just have to be, you know, anti-gay. You know, there's, you know, some of the cases related to this, you know, denying services to folks who have been previously divorced. You know, I mean, that's a huge section of our country, people who, you know, have been divorced before, you know, folks who are in kind of smaller religious groups, but still, you know, like I said, Jewish people, Muslim people, single women, you know, there's lots of examples of these, and this court case could have a huge impact on them. You're absolutely right.
Do we have some questions?
No one has asked a question yet. I mean, viewers, get on top of it. We love to ask Brian some questions. You know.
Oh, well, we have some nice comments. A very supportive person, Nick Lyon, said, great topic of discussion for uncertain, scary times. And let's see who else is on there that has a little something to say.
Well, this is coming from TriVersity, but we have a number of editors on our page. So I don't know who said
I'm
it.
one of them, but I'm here with you.
Thank you so much for all the hard work you have put into equality and basic human rights. We made a donation to NEAT on the behalf of TriVersity.
Yay!
Well, thank you very much. Thank you very, very much. Yeah, we can't do the, you know, we can't do the work that we do without amazing volunteers, and we can't do it without the amazing donations from the community. So really, really appreciate that. I should give a plug. Our website is theneat.org to find out more about what we do, or if you would like to make a donation. So thank you.
And just so everyone knows, I always come exquisitely well prepared. All of the links were in the comments, so you can get to them. And I post them below the screen here so that you can see them.
Because Stephen is technical. I'm not.
I write something in and then hit the button.
He's got it all
extremely
down.
difficult. So Brian, a very important question. I mean, weren't you truly impressed when Judge Barrett showed that her notepad was empty during the confirmation hearing?
You went there.
Oh, so many things about the confirmation hearing. I mean, it really takes it's a real talent to, you know, to not answer a question or any question in so many ways. I think I saw some jokes that said, you know, the Supreme Court justice must be the easiest job in the world, because your job interview, you just have to say, I refuse to answer that question. You know, and this was, you know, some of the stuff was, like you said, you know, saying things like sexual preference instead of sexual orientation. That's something that the kind of the anti-LGBT right wing, you know, community, this is what they teach and train, you know, folks to use these specific kinds of words. This is, you know, these things are not accidents. She's not, you know, she is a professor at a very esteemed university. You know, she knows what she's saying. She knows what she's doing. You know, there is no maybe she didn't know or understand. So yeah, you know, just kind of watching all of that has it's sad. It's really, really sad, because you know, before the Republicans started their court packing scheme, which was when they took control of the Senate during the Obama administration. Folks don't maybe understand this, but there are hundreds of judges that Obama nominated that the Republican Senate just refused to hear. And they did that specifically so to create, you know, to create this absence of judges, so that when they won the presidency the next time, that was their hope, was that then they could ram through all of the judges that they have been doing. You know, so that's, you know, folks talk about, will the Supreme Court be expanded? Well, the court packing scheme has been going on from our Republican friends for many, many years now. And that's really what has happened. So yeah, it was a spectacle, and it was sad. And the hypocrisy. And now you see so many of the senators on there supporting Judge Barrett, who are in very perilous positions in their races because the people don't want it. The people do not want this. They want the nomination to wait till after inauguration, and then the next president, regardless of who it is, can then appoint a Supreme Court justice with the understanding that they're there by the will of the people.
Right.
Let her have her day
Right.
if Donald Trump wins re-election. I mean, it seems to be that simple. I mean, on this topic of her saying sexual preference, I mean, it's just truly baffling. Very intelligent people will come out and say, oh, she was ignorant. And it's like, no, she wasn't. I mean, she taught con law at Notre Dame, and her idol Scalia wrote a dissenting opinion in a number of LGBTQ decisions where he would put orientation in quotes. Right. I mean, so
she deliberately didn't use it, so she knew what she was
doing. So let's not play the ignorant game. She said what she said, and she said it for a reason.
Yep. It's like, what do they say? If when I say what I say, believe me. Just it's just that blatant.
Sounds like Dr. Seuss had said what I said. Please believe what I said.
Right. Exactly.
So I want to know, like, what are your hobbies? You're the first person I've ever asked that to, but you're such a light up, positive person, and you're a beacon of light right now, and we need people like that. What do you do in your spare time?
Well, I used to really enjoy to travel. I think many people did. That's been hard. One of the things with my work is I often do get to travel for work to go visit, conferences, different volunteer events and things like that. And always, when you travel for work, try to stay a couple extra days and see a new place that you've never been to. So I very much enjoy that. I'm very fortunate that my husband is an amazing cook. So, definitely like to cook, or living in a city like New York that never sleeps and has every type of food you could ever find and want. It's been great exploring, and that exploring has an added bonus during the pandemic that we're helping to keep some of our favorite local businesses alive. Eating out or ordering in has become kind of a way to help people out that are struggling in the pandemic.
The fact that eating has now become an act of philanthropy really makes me
I was always eating out or ordering in. But I started a cooking show during the pandemic.
Oh, great.
I know it's kind of crazy, but I always, was never a person to cook. So eating out or ordering in it's great. And it's been fun during the pandemic to support, in New York, there's restaurants that I go to and support. Also bars, Stonewall and Julius and all of those bars down there, they all need our business, right? If you're in New York City, we have to keep them going. All of us have a bigger responsibility through all of this.
Absolutely.
So Brian, I have a question from Simone. Simone Kraus. She's our vice president of TriVersity, and we'll see if it's something you might have an answer to. Simone says, I worry that if the Affordable Care Act is overturned, how it will affect transition-related services on Medicare, as that only came about in the Obama years. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Sure. And before I dive into that, I'll give a little a plug. When you go to sign up for the virtual town hall on the Fulton decision, which is November 4th, we actually have at ourdayincourt.org. You can actually choose to be signed up for a planned virtual town hall we'll have on the 10th, which is going to be about the ACA, because that's the day the court will be hearing the decision for that. So you can sign up for both at the same time. But we should be very concerned. I mean, the Republican Party and the conservative movement has worked tirelessly. I mean, I can't even believe that we say that you can say this out loud. They are tirelessly working to take health care from people.
Horrible.
To take the AC away from people. And they've been doing it for years. Now they're doing it in the middle of a global pandemic. I mean, these sentences are just you can't even believe that you're saying them out loud. So we should absolutely be very concerned about not just services provided for people who are transitioning, who are transgender, who are LGBTQ, but also the ACA has certain anti-discrimination protections written into it, and those protections, being repealed or not being allowed to come into full effect. So there's lots of parts of the ACA that we should be worried about. And on top of that, if the ACA is going to be repealed and there's something so great that it's going to be replacing it, why have we never seen it? That's.
And when they had both houses, when the Republicans had both houses in the presidency, you think we would have received something potentially, but
didn't happen.
Absolutely.
Didn't happen.
Yeah.
We have good questions from someone at TriVersity.
So somebody at TriVersity, anonymous, I guess. Brian, I know you've been all over the world with your work. Which country do you feel is the most backwards regarding the LGBTQ plus community?
Well, I will say this. Every country that I have been to, you can find people who are supportive of LGBTQ people. And I think that's important to say, because sometimes we talk about groups of countries, whether by geography or, their religion or what have you. And it kind of then makes it seem like everybody who is, from that country, and that's that to me is kind of a more important question to answer, is that there is support for our community all across the world, and it is bigger in some places and smaller in others, but it is everywhere. And so that to me has been kind of the more joyful thing to discover, and also to remember that even in the places that are the most supportive, that you think, sometimes we say, oh, if this happens, I'm going to go leave this country and go there. There is also bigotry and hatred in those countries. And bigotry and hatred does not know sexual orientation or gender or religion. It's hate is hate, whether it's hating you because you're gay or you're black or you're Muslim. So, that's one thing that I have definitely discovered. But what I will just say, as far as some of the most backwards, or I don't know if I would use that word, but I think it's just important to remember that there are still a large number of countries where the punishment for being LGBTQ is death. Yep. And that to me, is something that we should be on the headline of every newspaper every day, that there are still countries that it's okay to kill somebody just because of, who they were born as or who they might love. And we should never forget that, and that change is critical to protecting the lives of the people in our communities.
So, and one final question for you. We talked about this toward the beginning. How would the Equality Act actually protect the LGBTQ plus community?
Sure. So, unlike most Western democracies, that is something, especially with my international travel, almost every Western democracy has a national non-discrimination law for LGBTQ people that protects them from discrimination. The United States is one of the few that doesn't. So number one, it would have protected you from being fired before the Bostock decision came down. But that codifies that decision into law, which is important to not just have it be a court case, but to have it be an actual law. It would protect you from being denied services in public accommodations, of things like Uber or a hotel or a restaurant or a hospital. It would protect you from being discriminated in credit. It would what some folks also don't know is protect you in housing, buying a house, getting a mortgage, renting from somebody, the housing protections we have. One of the things that folks may not know about the Equality Act is the Equality Act also updates civil rights protections outside of LGBTQ identity. So for example, in the Civil Rights Act that protects people from discrimination based on things like, like your race, it talked about public accommodations and listed them for what they were at the time. So you have things like like a Woolworths counter service. But it doesn't protect you in things in the new economy, like an Uber or other things like that. And it also updates protections for women across the board to allow to eliminate some of the legal discriminations that women face in our country. So while the Equality Act is primarily designed to bring equality to LGBTQ people, it is a wider vehicle to enhance the civil rights of almost all Americans and make sure that we're protected in all aspects of our lives.
Wow.
Wow.
Great answer to that question.
Absolutely. And definitely worth knowing that, we think about this narrowly toward the LGBTQ community, but really this affects a lot more of us. So,
Absolutely.
I mean, support for the Equality Act doesn't just have to be narrow to our community. This is supporting so many more.
I think tonight you've really pointed out, and a lot of what you said, it is a bigger picture. We're starting with the LGBTQ community, but really it's like goes out around to everybody at the end of the day,
Absolutely. Well, we're all people made up of multiple identities.
Yeah.
We're none of us are just gay or just a woman or just Black or just Christian. We might be all of those things in one person. So, if we want to truly protect each other as whole human beings, we need to do that for all aspects of who we are.
So, Brian, before we sign off, is there any last words, any last plugs, anything you want to say?
Anything you want people to know?
Vote. No matter what. Vote early, vote by mail, vote absentee, vote on the day of. But I think, 3 years ago, we learned the cost of apathy, or the cost of being convinced that there's nothing we can do to change a system that we know is not perfect. But the first step to doing that is voting. So I encourage everybody to get out there and make sure that you vote. And then once you've done that, make sure that you grab 2 or 3 friends and family members and make sure they get out and vote. Yep. Don't make it stop with you and your vote only.
There you go.
Amen. So, there's
yes.
one lesson here, vote. Well, Brian, we are so grateful that you agreed to do this.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you for having me. It's been a blast.
Okay. Wishing you the best. And what am I going to say? See you on the other side. How does that sound?
There you go. There you go.
Good night, everybody. We love y'all.
Everybody. Thank you.
Good night, everyone. Have a good